All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of Into the Lion's Den with your co-hosts for another couple of weeks, Mr. Clark Kent, Dan the Man Taylor, and too early, and Chris and Griffith, brought to you proudly by Level Creative Studios and Pride Roofing and Construction. Perfect. All right, so this is going to be, dependent upon how long we discuss today, it's either going to be our last one or two sales intensive topics on Into the Lion's Den. Today we're going to be talking about some real application strategy, tactics, things like that. So if you're already in the field of sales, this is probably things that you're already accustomed to, but we're going to give you some in-depth conversation on each of those, how they've worked for us, and how they've helped us progress in our sales career. Do you know one of those topics you'd like to start with? Because I've got a plethora of things.
I would say, and I think this kind of ties back into a couple of other topics that we talked about. Let's talk about burnout.
Burnout.
Yeah, burnout.
Okay.
Burnout in the sales world, because you hear a lot of these people, a lot of times they're like, man, I'm just burned out, or I'm just tired. And it's like, how do you stop yourself from burning out or getting to that point of where you feel burnout is?
Mm-hmm.
So we can kind of dive into that, and I'll give you just what I feel like helps with burnout. I mean, when you work 50, 60, 70 hours a week, it is pretty easy to burn out, especially when you have family and kids at home. So it's like, how do you maximize your opportunities out in the sales field so that you don't get that burnout? Because I think a lot of people think is you get into the sales field and they prospect, but it's like, as you're prospecting, it's like, what can you do to leverage your prospecting time or your cold calling days, whatever you're doing that day. So
Okay.
let's talk about that.
Sounds good to me. I think I want to address burnout with one specific phrase that I use a lot in all of our management or sales meetings, which is that what you have to understand when you work in a sales job is that you need to apply blue collar work ethic to a white collar job. That's the thing that a lot of times people, and I think I kind of touched on this a little bit when we talked about the younger generation, right? The younger generation understands the value of the conduit, the sale, getting your product to somebody else and being that delivery mechanism, but they may or may not have a lot of wherewithal because they've been given participation awards their whole life, and they're like, it's okay to be just okay.
Everybody gets ice cream. That's okay. We won today.
Yeah, there aren't first and second place. Everybody's a winner. That's if you have that as a methodology in your life, I hope it works out for you, but it just doesn't work in a competitive field, whether that's athletics, whether that's sales, whether that's business in general, right? So that idea of working with a blue-collar work ethic in a white-collar job, you have to essentially cut off certain things in your life that a lot of salespeople fall victim of. Meaning, like, as a salesperson, you have an incredible amount of sovereignty and independence. And with sovereignty and independence, that really leaves a lot of lurking open doors for you to kind of just fuck off if you want to, right? Nobody's standing next to you. Nobody's gauging everything that you do. They look at your overall metrics, but they're not looking at your day-to-day. They're not standing next to you, so on and so forth, right? And so for me, personally, there are things that I won't do. I will not go home during my workday. Point blank and simple, right? If I have to do dedicated time behind a computer to paperwork and things like that, I could do that from home, right? But I'm not going to go home for lunch. I'm not going to go home just because I felt like it because I was driving by, although my family would probably like that.
Yep.
I'm not going to do it because I know if I go there and I intend to be there for 10 minutes, I'll be there for 2 hours.
Yep.
Right? So there's boundary setting that's associated with that. Additionally, and when I say blue collar work ethic with white collar job, a blue collar job, if you're on an oil patch, right, you can't just go home. Right.
Yeah,
you're 3 hours away. Right. You can't just call in and say, I don't feel like doing it today. You can't just hit the snooze button. You will lose your job. Right. In a sales world, that might not be the case.
Yep.
Right? But you should treat it that way. Right. There's never a time, and I have other boundaries, which is that I'm in the office at the exact same time every single day, regardless of if I have my first appointment may not be till 2:00 in the afternoon, but I'm still in there in the office immediately when I'm supposed to be there, and I don't leave until I'm until I've given
Yeah.
myself
Like
that
yeah.
time, which I told everybody I don't go past 6 o'clock. That's just something that I do, right? It could be different. Your subsex of time can be different person to person, but I essentially put myself in a mindset that I cannot go home. I cannot take the breaks because I will lose my job. Now, me being the owner of the business, that's not the truth, but I treat it that way.
Yeah.
Right. I can do whatever I want to, whatever I want to, but I'm never going to take that advantage of that because it will start to become a very slippery slope. So that's first and foremost. I would say that's the best way to avoid burnout is understand that the don't give yourself an out in any situation. But when you start to feel those effects of burnout, because everybody gets burnout, right? It's like it doesn't have to be a salesperson. It could be whatever job that you're doing. You hit a point where it's just like redundant and meticulous amounts of paperwork and blah 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 blah. Burnout, I think, is for me. How do I put this? You have to have. I mean, I've mentioned this 100 times on this podcast, but it's like you have to have an underlying why factor, and it can't be just for the sake of doing the job.
Yeah.
Right. I have to be disciplined in everything that I do. Right. I have to open that car door. I have to knock those doors. I have to pick up the phone. I have to make those calls. I have to do all those things because there are other people relying on me. Right. So having a grounded why factor will help you get through it, and just and not allowing yourself to ride the waves of motivation, because motivation is bullshit.
Yeah.
Motivation is bullshit. It's completely it's inorganic. Right.
Yeah, I just brought that up to the guys the other day. Is just I said motivation comes and goes. So if you're waiting to be motivated,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good luck.
Yeah.
It's very. I mean, it's like I said. I can wake up today and it's like, oh, I'm so motivated, and then one thing happens, and then you'll let it derail the rest of your week. So
yeah, if you're riding on motivation, you're going to be very short-lived,
Yeah.
right? And you have to put in these disciplined thought processes, and that's what I was talking about, the boundaries that you set with yourself, changing your mindset to, I'm doing this with blue-collar work ethic, I'm putting my hours in, and then setting goals and expectations for yourself that are even above and beyond what your operational agreement and your personal KPIs require. For instance, when I first started doing this job, I was a 1099 salesperson. I could do whatever I wanted to, whenever I wanted. But I knew what I needed to do to support my family. So every time I went into the field and knocked doors or whatever it was, I would not let myself leave, regardless of how cold it was, what time it was, how many times I got shit on by clients saying F off or whatever it was, right? I would not leave until I had a contingency in my hand, right? That's against roofing specific, but there's a yes until you get that yes. I would not let myself leave, and that's my ticket out. Right, so if that happens early in the day, I'm the kind that says that a champion does one more. Right, if it happens late in the day, I finally succeeded.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I think especially in this industry, this sales industry, the roofing industry is a lot different than a lot of other places where you're actually going to a physical location. You're kind of there all day. So we do have that autonomy throughout our schedules and our workday. And I do feel a lot of people, especially starting out being new, they struggle with having that much autonomy because there's typically guys that come from businesses like my background, the car business, or wherever you are, but you're in one central location. You're kind of there all day. You have people watching over you, so it's not like you can just pick up and leave and like, oh, I'm going to just go home because everybody's like, oh, well, where'd that guy go? So they kind of hold you accountable. You're like, no, everybody else is here. You have to stay here too. So I think in this industry, when we get a lot of new guys that come in, they're like, oh, this is freedom. So it's like you said, you get out there in the field, it might be cold or you might be having a bad day or you're getting shit on from a customer. And they're like, yeah, well, I'll just go home. I'll get it tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do that the next day. And then they're like, okay, well, same thing happens. And then the next thing you know, you're at a 5-day work week and you've realistically probably prospected 4 hours if you're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're not showing any results. So then you go into the next week and you have to report on your last week and you're like, well, I prospected all week, because you're telling yourself, you're like, yeah, I prospected, but you really didn't. And then you're getting fatigued or you're getting down on yourself and you're like, man, this job just sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really burning out or whatever it is. Maybe this isn't the right position for me. So I think we see that a lot in our industry. They don't realize the freedom that's on the other side, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you put in your work now to be able to have that freedom later on. So for me, being in the car dealership for 12 years, like anytime that you have to go anywhere, you always have to seek approval. So it's not like if I wanted to go get my hair cut or whatever it was, it's like, all right, can I leave? Like, is that okay? Even though I'm doing my job the whole day, but like here, it's like, yeah, well, okay, I'll go get my hair cut, and then it's like, well, I'm hungry. All right, let me go eat. And then it's like, well, now I'm kind of tired. Let me just swing by home real quick and see what everybody's doing. And then the next thing you know, your kind of date gets taken away from you.
Mm-hmm.
So then, I think it's the trickle down effect. But then on the other side, you have the guys like you said, you're out there all day and you're just grinding it out
Mm-hmm.
to do what you have to do. For me, I don't think burnout. I've never felt burnout in a sales position ever, because that next contract is always what keeps me going. Now, if I went into a stint of say weeks or months where I'm like not producing anything, I would probably feel that fatigue and burnout, but I would also not be doing what I was supposed to be doing leading up to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's for certain salespeople you look at, it's like, what does the burnout actually mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
Are you burned out because you're physically and mentally not doing your job? Or are you burned out because you're just some super rock star and you're just tired of carrying the team, which you don't meet a lot of those guys that actually ever feel that way. I feel like burnout typically comes from like, hey, I'm underperforming, not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, not getting any results, not trying to get better, not trying to progress. Then that's typically where that burnout will come in at.
Yeah, there's probably I probably need to put in a clear differentiation. We're talking about, my response was in relation to an outside salesperson, right?
Okay.
Meaning like your job, the majority of your job is spent with your team or with your clientele. You're out in the field, you're away from that office, whatever. But inside sales personnel, burnout, you see it and hear it more often because they're around each other and they kind of feed off of each other. But suggestions I would give in that scenario would be, let's call it telemarketing, right? It would be hours with your ass in the seat, right? You have to set an expectation for yourself with your hours and your ass in the seat. It's simple and straightforward. But you could do simple stuff too. It's like, let's contact our manager and let's say, hey, I'm feeling this way. My pitch is changing because I'm down and out. I know that the clientele is hearing from me that I'm not motivated or passionate about what I'm selling. Is there a way I can change this up? And we flip the script and you change to a different subgroup of sales with a different pitch and a different a whole different process, and that in and of itself just remotivates and resparks something because now it's new, right? I would always say, work with the people around you to make sure that there's a little bit of, let's challenge ourselves mentally, let's change things up a little bit, and let's not just hammer the exact same spot and the same nail over and over and over. Change it up, try new things.
I feel like people a lot of times have a hard time asking for help though.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see that I mean, we can say that a million times to people, but a lot of people, they never want to acknowledge when they're feeling down or when they're feeling that like burnout or whatever it is, or stuck, however we want to call it. So it's good when you're around those people to try to help identify it. And you can gauge somebody pretty quickly. When I walk in, I'm like, hey dude, what's up? And you're just like, that's like, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, yeah, I guess so. And it's like, okay, like that should be your tall tale sign. It's like, okay, maybe this person needs a little bit more help today.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of get them out of that rut or that funk or whatever they're in.
Let's expand on that. Yeah, you as a manager, a sales manager, what do you do when you know you have one of your guys with burnout?
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. I feel like it's continual conversations with people, and it's almost like talking them off the ledge.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a lot of these guys will get in their own heads, and it's what we just talked about. It's like you might go through a week and you're like, man, that week just sucked.
Mm-hmm.
And then that flows into the following week and then so on and so forth. So it's just there's always a reset of like, all right, you know what you're capable of, you know what you can do. It's let's redirect and refocus. And then most of the time it's just a conversation of like, hey guys, this is what we need to do. And they're like, oh, okay, that helps out a lot. Or just bouncing different ideals to kind of help get that healthy reset. But for certain people, I mean, it might just be it's what they're doing after work. Or it's like you're working all day, you're getting your balls kicked in, and then you get home and you're doing literally nothing besides just laying around watching TV. You're not doing anything to better yourself. Then you continually feel bad for yourself. So it's like you're not active, you're not mentally strong, you're not reading books, you're not listening, whatever it is, podcasts. So it's like, for them, it's like, okay, what can we change outside of work as well? So it's like, hey, I want to get back in the gym. That's awesome, man. Let's get back in the gym. How can you do that? Well, I'm going to go every day at 6 o'clock. And then you follow up with them to see if they're achieving that, because you feel better outside of work. You're naturally going to feel better inside of work. So
Yeah.
we see that. I mean, unfortunately, we see that a lot.
Mhm.
It happens all the time. So
It sure does. But a smart manager will know and get involved.
yeah,
Right. And it could be something very simple. It could be let's just change what we're trying to do today temporarily.
Yep.
Right. So maybe we put together a spiff. It's like, let's see who can produce this.
Yep.
And I'll give you an extra $100 because it just changes. You're not in the same rut.
Yeah.
You move to a different side of things and move on. Right.
it's. I mean, this job unfortunately is all mental.
All mental.
It's all mental. So it's like, if you can get past that mental aspect of, I think a lot of people, I talk to people and they're like, oh, you work on commission, so on and so forth. And a lot of people are like, oh, I can never work on commission.
Mhm.
And I'm the opposite. I'm like, I can never not work on commission. So it's just a mindset of what mindset are you in?
I remember when I had my very first, like, we talked about like little things we did when we were kids, but when I had a real sales job for the first time, and I was really uncomfortable because I'm a very introverted person by nature. This is before I kind of broke through that mold and figured out this whole world of things. I remember my very first day after doing business to business for about 8 hours straight. I fell asleep at the dinner table at my girlfriend's house that night, like while talking to her parents, right? And I remember,
What the heck is this guy doing?
I remember specifically thinking, I have never been more drained mentally in my life. I've done a lot of labor jobs. I worked on dairies, throwing tires up a hill for hours on end. Anyways, I've done landscaping. I've done, you name it, right? I've done a lot of things with my body, and none of them made me feel the same way I felt when I sat at that table for that day, right? So the mental struggle is real, right? And you have to understand that in overcoming the mental battles inside of your head is one of the hardest things that a salesperson is ever going to have to do. And there's no guarantee. The only guarantee that you can give yourself as a salesperson is that you'll continue to show up, right? And if you stop allowing yourself to show up, you'll let burnout kill you.
Persistency and consistency is what I tell everybody. So if you're persistent and consistent, there's not going to be anybody else out there that can tell you that you're not working hard enough, that you're not going to succeed, because at some point in time, you're eventually going to catch that break. Things are going to just start clicking for you. So like we talk about, when I first got into this industry, it was, I mean, I went through the same thing. The first couple months, I was like, man, I just don't know if this is right for me. Or it's like, you go home every day, you're tired, you're like, yeah, this job, blah, 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 blah. And then you finally realize, you're like, okay, this job is not hard. I'm making it harder on myself by the actions that I'm doing. So it's like, how can I change that? And you can change that very quickly in this industry of just, every opportunity can lead you to, I don't know, 2, 4, 6 other opportunities. So let's leverage every opportunity that you have to help with that burnout. So it's like, if you have somebody that has to work 70 hours a week to produce what somebody can produce in 40 hours a week, it's like, okay, this guy's doing it in 40. How is he doing that? Well, he's doing it in 40 because he's prospecting at these times, or he's asking for referrals. So for every one customer he has, he's getting two more. It's 1-to-1. So whatever it is, it's like, come up with that strategy, figure out what works best for you, and then just leverage that to help with burnout. So it's like, you don't have to go out and prospect for 50 hours a week. You can now do it for 20 because you've leveraged the other half to work for you. So
this is good. These are good tidbits. I hope people are listening. So yeah. All right. So burnout. Do you want to spin it into sales tactics, or do we want to stick with just what the average life of a salesman is like and how to get through it?
I mean, I think that's different for a lot of people. We go back to what we were just saying, is like the autonomy. For me, my autonomy means everything. So it's like, I don't want somebody to micromanage me throughout the day. The only way that I can get somebody to not micromanage me throughout the day is do what I'm supposed to be doing every single day that I come to work. Now, for me, it's the little things that mean the most to me. Like this morning, for example, My schedule was clear. Wife woke up sick, had to take the kid to the doctor. I was able to do that. If I was in the car business, I wouldn't be able to.
Mm-hmm.
But I told myself, it's like, hey, I show up and do what I have to do every single day. So if I have to run out and do something like this, then I can do that. I don't feel guilty, or I don't feel like I'm like being dishonest to the company because I show up in other ways.
Yeah.
So for me, that means a lot. But I also worked very hard to be able to do that. So I would say the day in the life of like the average salesperson it's different, but I would say that the biggest thing that you should really focus on and really put an emphasis on is your schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how are you scheduling out your day?
Mm-hmm.
And when I first got into the roofing industry, it was super tough because I didn't schedule out my day. I would literally, it was almost like I was just flying around like at the seam of my pants.
Yeah.
And it was like, it's like, how long can you actually do this for? And the answer is not very long,
Mm-hmm.
because then you will get fatigued and then you do see that burnout. So it's when you plan out your week or you plan out your month, however you want to plan that out. It's hard to probably plan out your month if you do a week by week basis. If you set down at the beginning of the week or you sit down on a Sunday night, say, okay, this is what I plan on doing for the week. Then it works out well and you stick to that schedule. So it's like, hey, my office hours are this. I know I have these appointments coming up, and then my prospecting time is this, and then whatever else you want to throw in your schedule. But if it's not my schedule, good luck. I'm most likely I'm going to forget it. It's not going to happen. So it's like stick true to your schedule, and if you hold yourself accountable, and the key word is self accountability, because there, like you just said, there's nobody standing there over your shoulder saying, hey Christian, you have to do this, like you have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, you know you have to do that. If you don't do it, most people won't know that you're not going to do it, but then we'll see the results on the other side that it wasn't done.
Yeah, I mean that well, it's a Navy SEAL mantra, but people say it all the time. It's, it pays to be a winner.
Yeah.
Right. So somebody who's grounded and dedicated and uses best practice, which is what we're talking about right now, is best practices, is somebody who nobody's gonna question you if for whatever reason you have a day where you can't be there till 2:00 because you need to take care of the kids and you have an event. Right. That's one of the things that I hold most dearly to myself, is that I've achieved a point in my life where if I want to go and attend, my kids' rehearsal at school, I can go and attend my kids' rehearsal at school. I have that autonomy, but I've earned that through staying dedicated and using best practices. So, what would you say for aspiring salespeople or people maybe who are struggling with their sales position? What would you say are the best practices of a salesperson?
I mean, communication is huge. So it's just how you communicate with your upper management, with your team, and with your clients. I mean, communication will, like, hands down. I guess let's take that back. Let's go back to prospecting, because then I think communication kind of comes after that. It's what are you doing to prepare yourself to prospect? Because at the end of the day, everything you do kind of revolves around prospecting. So if you're preparing yourself on what you're going to do, like we just talked about with your schedule, and you're going to dedicate your time accordingly, you should have, especially if you're struggling, you should have time set aside for training, and you should have time set aside for actually prospecting. So for us, it's like if we have somebody struggling, I hope that it's being brought up in the sales meeting, and we're trying to figure out what pitch that they're using that's not working, or what they're saying, or are they being awkward, are they talking too fast. We have somebody that works here that was struggling for a while with just talking way too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you would get them on the phone, it was like blah, 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 blah. It's like I don't even know what you just said because you're talking way too fast.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, go home, I want you to talk to yourself in the mirror. And they're like, well, that's weird. And I was like, no, I promise you, because I used to have the same problem. When I got into selling cars, I was an extremely fast talker. And people always said, hey, I really like you, but you talk too fast, you kind of lose me. So I said, go talk to yourself in the mirror, you'll see how fast you're talking. And I think that really helped.
Mm-hmm.
So it's finding out what you need help on your training and then implementing that into the field. So it's like, hey, if I need 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours of training time this week, and then I can dedicate my other 30 hours out in the field, and those 4 hours of training were super effective, and now it's maybe that much better. It's like, okay, maybe next week we do the same thing, and the following week. So it's be prepared with your schedule on what you need, but a lot of your time should be focused on prospecting.
Yeah. In the gym, I really I refer back to the gym a lot because I learned a lot of very important tools within the time that I spent in that industry. And one of the things that I liked the most was there was always a conversation every single day from managers to their employees, whether that was at halftime, whether it was before the day started, or whether that was at the end of the day to recap to set up. But it was about how did you plan for success,
Yep.
right? And what I mean by that is like if you were to look at your schedule for any 5 days into the future, do you already have a successful week set up because of the coordination from the days prior? And if you don't, you're going to send yourself into a tailspin because you're stretching, you're clawing, you're trying to find things because you haven't actually done the due diligence that's necessary to set up an effective week, right? So in the gym, the managers would do that, or the training managers would do this all the time. They would have that midday, they call it a halftime call, and Dries was the guy's name that ran that side of the organization, and he'd say, "Okay, Jordan, what'd you set up, or how did you plan for success for the second half of the day?" And they'd be like, "Well, actually, I don't have any appointments. I don't have any assessments to do, and it was because I fell off the radar this morning and forgot to make my calls." He says, "So what are you going to do?" And he says, "From now until 4 o'clock when prime time hits, I am going to hit the call logs. I'm going to pull people off the floor. I'm going to do the X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to pack in at least 2 appointments or assessments during that time period." Right? As a salesperson, you have to always plan for success, and a lot of that boils down to scheduling. Right? Are you giving yourself the associated time to be able to do true follow-up, dedicated follow-up with the clients that you have right now? And are you giving yourself the amount of time that's necessary to find the new clients? So setting yourself up for success is essentially saying, are you opening up enough time to continually fill your funnel, or are you just trying to work off of what you've done in the past?
It's like I always say, hope is not a strategy.
It's not.
I said that.
Yeah.
Probably maybe my third week here.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but it's true. And I think us as sales guys, I think that's some people's approach. They say like, "Well, I hope that I can go out and get this," or "I hope I'm going to do this." And it's like, if you're hoping, then it's probably never going to happen. You might get lucky, and it happens every once in a while, but it's truly not. Hope is not a strategy.
Yeah. I mean, one of the smartest things that you can do as an aspiring or new salesperson is get really in tune and ask a lot of questions to the highest producer.
Yep.
If you look at a highest producer's schedule, like if they're dedicated and they've been here a while, their schedule is always set. It's always the same. It's rigid. They're not going to break their schedule, right? They know exactly when they're going to sell. They know how much they're going to sell. They know how many people they're going to contact based off of all of their historical data.
Yep.
They understand and they can regurgitate that instantly, right? If you go into a new person's schedule and you look at what they have planned for themselves, chances are every Monday it's completely blank and they are just going to try to figure it out.
Yeah. It's not a lot.
Hope is not a strategy. It's not going to work.
They show up every day and they're like, "Okay, what do I do today?"
Yeah.
It's like, you've been doing this for 2 months. You know what to do today. So you don't need to seek that affirmation from me. But I think but that's what happens a lot of time. They fall into that realm. And it's just, I mean, it's almost like once you get into it, it's hard to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you just sit down 1 week and say that you've been in this tailspin, or you're in a rut, or you're struggling as a salesperson, you just sit down for a few hours and just self-reflect. And you could even reflect on the previous day.
Mm-hmm.
So I reflect all the time. I'm like, okay, what did I do today? And granted, our days you have certain days that you're like mine was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really fucked up day yesterday. And I was like, I don't even know how I made it through the day. Like, I was literally from here to Parker to Arvada to Centennial to Aurora. I had to do drone inspections. My drone got stuck in a tree. The wind blew it, got stuck 60 feet in the air. And I'm like looking up there. I'm like, I don't even know. I was like, I look at my watch. I'm like, it's 2 o'clock. I'm like, I'm running behind. I'm like, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done with today.
Mm-hmm.
So then I had to go to Home Depot, buy a freaking pole, get it down. it was a debacle. Yeah. So then I looked back as I was driving home last night. I was like, okay, what could I have done differently? There's a few things I could have done differently throughout my schedule, or planned just a little bit different, or road mapped logistically on where I was going. I kind of messed up and bounced back and forth a few times. But it's like, I feel like a lot of times we'll let the day run us instead of running the day, but then we never self reflect to figure out why that happened. So it's like, we talked about a few podcasts ago that I had a guy that I sent a quote out to that I was getting ready to leave town. I heard him send it out. I didn't follow my normal protocol. And next thing you know, he's like, hey, I decided to go with somebody else. So it's like, you have to reflect and say, why did that happen? So you know not to do it again. So
Right.
I know what not to do anymore, but I think a lot of people, they won't look back and say, okay, I'm doing this, this, and this wrong. It's like, no, I'm great. I'm doing great. Like, I'm doing everything you want me to do.
Yeah, I'll regularly get a little bit surgical with certain things, like look into my schedule, and if I know, okay, this is going to be a heavy car day, I'm going to a lot of different areas. What I'll do is I'll make sure, okay, do I have the smartest and most efficient path?
Yep.
Right? So I'm not running in a star pattern, wasting time on the road and that kind of stuff. And if I don't, then I'm going to call those clients and see if I can re-coordinate it, recalibrate it, and that type of stuff.
Day, yep.
And then after that, I go even further than that, which is I'll write down every single one of the clients that I need to do a follow-up on, and I'll utilize the pocket of my day, which is that drive time, so that I could do something that normally I would have done from a computer, but because I'm in the car, I can do that, right? That's where the efficiency comes from. You said there's people that can do a job in 70 hours that somebody else can do in 40. That's really where you get that done, right? Utilize every pocket that you have and be surgical. Be a sharpshooter. Don't be a bullet catcher, right? Don't just let the world come to you. Right?
So, and that's what happens. I mean, unfortunately, that's what happens a lot of time. And I anybody that's in a sales position, and what we're talking about is not new information. Like, everybody knows the basic realm of what they need to do in a sales position. It's getting from the point of knowing what to do and getting out there and actually doing it. So it's like, a lot of times we want instant gratification. So it's we know what we have to do, but we're just afraid to take that next step to actually do it. But then once you do, you're like, oh, this was easier than what I thought, and it's so much more rewarding to be on the other side instead of you're at the bottom of the hill instead of the top of the hill, and it's just so much more fruitful on the other side. So get out there and actually do it.
Yeah, I think the things that you're holding off on doing, or that you're resistant to doing, or that you're scared of doing, as you put it, are really the best way I could say this is a temporary pain for long-term gain, right? It might be a change to the way that you're doing your life. It might be hard to adjust to it, but once you've done it and you've got efficiencies built into your life, and you can double, triple, quadruple your output, which means you're double, quadruple, tripling, whatever it is, your financial status in life, right? That's the coolest part about being a salesperson, is you get to, your pay is reflective of the value and the input you put in every time, right? You're being paid for how much work you did, right?
That's what I always say.
Right, and you know that kind of sucks for people that are not in sales positions, right? It's like they put a lot of work in, but the salary is exactly the same.
You get paid exactly the same every single week.
Right, and so it's like, there's different driving factors to those types of jobs, and sometimes in sales is not for everybody. I mean, we talked about that, but at the same time, it's like, if you are in that position, why not maximize it? Why not put and embed every best practice? Why not review and analyze every single interaction that you have? Go back and put it into your repertoire, into that Rolodex we were talking about before, and make sure that is always embedded into your personal software all the time.
Well, I think that stems from, I feel like that stems from two things. One, ego. Us as salespeople, we're naturally, I feel like we have a bigger ego. Not saying that we do. But
you don't have an ego.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah. But it's either ego or it's laziness is what will drive that factor. So it's either you're too stubborn to actually say, okay, I need to take a step back and really listen to what this guy's saying. I don't know everything, so I learn something new every single day. Now, do I feel like I'm good at what I do? Yes. But can I learn from other people that have more sales experience or have been in the business longer? Absolutely. So if anybody's giving me advice, I'm like, okay, like, I want to take that with a grain of salt. How can I take that and implement it into my day so it works for me? Now, what I do might not be the same thing of what you do, and vice versa, but it's like, okay, maybe you said something that I'm like, you know what, I never thought of that, or maybe I can pitch that into something else. But a lot of times it's like, no, like, I'm the best that there ever is, and I'm not going to listen to anybody else. So you're almost your own worst enemy. Or you're on the other side, you're just like, I just don't really feel like doing. I'm going to just go through the motions,
Mhm.
grab what I can, grab all the low hanging fruit, and just be a mediocre producer and just get by.
Yeah, and that's best practice. I would say is coachability.
Yeah.
Add to this conversation is coachability. I don't know who the best salesman in the world is,
Yeah.
but it's not any of us.
No.
Not anyone that's listening to this video. I can guarantee it.
No.
Right? As much as my ego says I've been doing great at this
Right.
for a very long
Yeah.
time, I know I am not the best. And that should motivate and inspire just about anybody else. It's like, why? I mean, the quest, like that's a man's plight in life, is to become the absolute best that they can at whatever it is that they choose to be. Right? And there's not a lot of people that have that fighting spirit where they're going to go deep and entrench and just dedicate and obsess and whatever. But everybody wants to be better. There's not a damn person that's ever going to watch this video that can say, nah, I'm just good where I'm at. And you actually look deep down inside yourself. There's things you don't like about yourself. There's things that you're insecure about. There are things you're not good at, and you pretend that you are. If we can get rid of that pride, that whatever it is, that ego that just is ruining your life, and just understand it's time to enmesh myself with other people who are doing better than me. Right? Let's be coachable. Let's be open to things. I do this. I make this error a lot of the times where I'll get a suggestion. And this is it's happened in sales, but a lot of it has to do with the position I hold as an owner here. I'll get suggestions about certain things, and I'm like, nah, I've already fucking tried that. That's the dumbest shit I ever heard. And I'm like, well, actually, it wasn't that dumb because I already had that idea. I'm really being an asshole to all these people, right? And so you need to be coachable in whatever world that you're in, or you will become stagnant.
Coachable and approachable is what I always say.
Yeah.
Now, granted, we all have. I mean, we have those days where somebody brings something to you, and you're like, no, that's fucking dumb. And then you're like, oh shit, like, oh no, that was actually pretty good. Okay, but like going back to tell that person, and I think that means a lot to people. It's like, it actually really was a good idea. Let's try it. It didn't work this last time for this reason, this reason, this reason. What is something new that we can try with this idea that might help us make us more successful? So it goes the same with sales pitch. It's like, it's prospecting. What are you doing different? It's like, can you do anything different? The answer is always yes. I know that I can do stuff. I hate to say this, but it's like, I tell myself I give 100% all the time, but I don't. If I had to guess, I probably operate at like truly dedicated time in the field. I would say probably 60% is.
Give me 40, bud. Give me 40.
60. Yeah, no, seriously. So it's like, for me, it's like we let all this other stuff and being new, like, and being a small company, we go through growing pains, so we're still trying to figure everything out as far as like what works the best for us, what doesn't. So it's like, if I truly didn't let a lot of other stuff and it impact in my day, I do think I would have a 40% more output, which would be a tremendous astronomical number at the end of the year. So it's like, my 2025 goal is like, how can I get rid of a lot of that stuff, the minutia stuff, to really maybe give 20% more. So like, how can I get better? I can acknowledge that a lot of people have a hard time saying, okay, I'm not giving 100% every single day. Well, I know I'm not giving 100% in this aspect. So it's like, all right, how can we get another 10%? And then like every single year, every single month, you just try to figure out how you can build from that.
A lot of people get blinded by the level of success that they're at.
Yeah.
Right, because it's different than where they were before.
Absolutely.
Right, so it's like, I love how much more comfortable this is, or I have the ability to do this now, which I never did before, or I can go shopping and I don't have to look at the tags. I just do what I want to do, and right, that's a level of success a lot of people want to be at, right? But that blinds you and makes you complacent. Right, everybody has to understand that there are more levels, there's more things to achieve, and that 1% that you've talked about a number of times on this sales podcast, those are the ones that just, they understand there's more.
Yeah. And
it's not necessarily, I mean, some of them it's for the sake of just making buku bucks, but some of them it's for the chase.
Yeah.
Just like, can I be the best?
Well, that's me. I'm always chasing that next, whatever that next is. I told you the other day, I said, hey, I hit this milestone this year. It's like, hitting it next year will tell me, or obviously my goal will be to beat that number, whatever that is. But for me, it's like, okay, you can do it 1 year, but can you do it years 3, 5, 10, 12, whatever it is? So it's like, are you constantly progressing? So for me, I'm always going to want to do better. So it's like, all right, hit this mark. Next year, I got to do this mark or whatever it is. So that's why when I ask him, like, hey, what's the most that somebody's done this month, like, or whatever it is, and that's when I'm like, okay, like, that's what I want to beat.
Yep.
And
well, it's because you got a go getter attitude.
Yeah.
Right. So we've gone over our best practices. We've talked about a lot of different things: burnout, how to avoid burnout. What are some other tips that we can give to our audience before we close this thing out?
I would just say, I know that we talk about communication just a great deal, and we deal with this on a daily basis here in our industry, is always communicate no matter what it is. Whether it's good, bad, ugly, just make sure that you're being an effective communicator. Because even if you're communicating bad information to a customer, or maybe
Like bad news.
Yeah, bad news, not information. Yeah, bad news
Mm-hmm.
to a customer that they might not want to hear. It's much better to just go at like a head-on approach instead of like, hey, I'm gonna just ignore this person for a couple days and maybe it's gonna go away. It's like, no, it's only gonna fester, make it even worse. Or like if you have an issue that's going on in the office, it's like, hey, let's bring it up, let's talk about it instead of letting it fester a little bit longer. So let's just always be a good communicator. And I still struggle with that. I mean, just ask my wife. She's like, you can be a better communicator, and I'm like, I can be. So it's like, but you have to acknowledge that, and then you just work towards how you can get better.
Yeah, just to piggyback off what you said, because when we say communication, that's a very vague thing, right? But communication, effective communicators are quick to respond. They will find the right information, regardless of it's good, bad, or indifferent. They will find it. They will get it to you. They will serve the purpose that they're supposed to be. So a salesperson is supposed to be a conduit, right? They're supposed to deliver this product, and they're supposed to ensure that the product is that the client is satisfied, whether it's a service or whether it's a product or whatever it is. They're satisfied by the end of it. Those are your two jobs, right? Yeah. So, an effective communication. So to piggyback, like I said, is honesty is refreshing. It's not always what people want to hear, but they're appreciative of the honest response because you're not hiding anything from them.
Yep.
And an immediate proactive approach to the honest response really is what makes the difference to be able to turn your one sale into 2, 3, 4. That referral tree, you mentioned it before, leveraging your clients to turn 1 into 2 or 3, or an account that runs forever, right? The only way you're going to do that is if you deliver honest information on time with urgency, and then also with the willingness to be proactive to the ramification or the remedy.
Yep.
Right? You're not always delivering bad news, but when you have it, it needs to be addressed immediately, and no matter how uncomfortable it may be for you.
And sometimes those aren't fun.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, if you need somebody else, tag them in. Let's just get it done and move forward. So most of the time, I mean, we're not dealing with brain surgery or life-threatening whatever. It's like at the end of the day, what we deal with, it's probably not that bad. So it's like you're hyping yourself up that it's really bad, but it's probably not as bad as you think it is. Yeah. It's like, hey, I messed up, I dropped the ball, or whatever it is. It's like, let's just move forward.
Yeah. So I guess to conclude the sales topics and things like that, the new sales in this current era that we live in is not the sales that you see from 1980s Hollywood films.
Nope.
Right? And if you are that salesperson where you're slimy, sticky, just what's the term? Shisty?
Yep.
Those people are short-lived. They will be found out with the amount of information that there is, an exchange of information in the world that there is right today. Those people will not last. So we're encouraging people to be honest. We're encouraging people to set themselves up for success, to schedule appropriately, and to be motivated by the chase. If you're motivated by the chase to become better every single day, you can be a good salesperson.
Just remember the internet's out there. You can find everything on the internet.
Sure as you can. Right.
So yeah, adapt that servant mentality to your clientele, to your customers, and I promise you, if that's something that you fully embrace, your customers or your community or your city will always take care of you. So you build that reputation. I feel like we have done really good as a company to do that. It's like you build that reputation that will always in turn take care of you. So adapt to servant mentality.
Yep. And this is the fourth time I think I brought it up on here, but if you work for an organization that does not have that as their mission statement,
give us a call.
Give us a call. Give us a call. Right. You do not want to expand your career being a shiesty mofo.
Yep.
Right. All right. So, you got anything else to add?
Nope. Appreciate you having me on. Always a fun topic to talk about. So.
Yep. Well, no problem. It's always fun to hang out with you. So that's it for this series and topic. Please like and subscribe, engage in the content, ask us some questions. If you'd like us to go back into a couple of things that we brought up that didn't expand on, please direct message us. But for now, that's it. We appreciate you coming in and tuning in. Catch you on the flip side.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Into the Lion's Den. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you've gathered enough ammunition to go out, fight the good fight, and become a better person every single day. Please like and subscribe, engage in our content, ask us some questions. We'd love to tailor fit the next episode to you.